Let's dive on into our YouTube portion of the segment. Brian on here, once again filling in for Trey Lyle, usually the host of Bringing the Heat. He will be back. Trey Lyle, that is, will be back next week on this program. I'll be back on Bring the Heat in 2 weeks. He is going to be subbing in for me. Michael Massey is back with us. And then joining us for the first time is Vito Puglisi. Vito, thank you so much once again for coming on the program. Massey, let's dive on into our YouTube topic. What are we cooking up on the YouTubes this evening, my friend?
Okay, so we've hit on the whole. If you listen to previous happy hour episodes, we hit on the whole Jeff Gordon, Denny Hamlin feud, where basically, I don't know, they were talking about the drivers not being marketed that much and all that. But Gordon came back this week and spoke more on it, and he basically said that we need to get to a system where fans are fans of the team, not just the driver, which you see in football, baseball. Like myself, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. Aaron Rodgers moved on. I didn't follow my fandom didn't follow Rodgers.
You could
I'm
have.
a Packers fan.
Go, baby.
Hey, I mean, I might get on that bandwagon if the Packers keep losing and get out of playoff contention. But no, so I'll be a Packers fan long after I'm a Rodgers fan. And the same deal, like Formula One, you see in that, that's a racing series, and you see fans are fans of Ferrari, they're fans of Red Bull, or it doesn't really matter who the drivers are. The drivers come and go. The fans stay loyal to that team. But that's never been the situation with NASCAR. Not really. And maybe some teams like the Wood Brothers or Petty Enterprises back in the day. But for the most part, like Dale Earnhardt Jr., those fans didn't stay with DEI when he left. They went with him to Hendrick. I'd say like Kevin Harvick as well, to Stuart Haas, some of those moves. And then when they retired, like Alex Bowman didn't become the most popular driver after stepping into the 88 car and then the 48. So we don't see fans follow the team as in NASCAR the way they do. It's all about the driver. So what do you guys, ask you guys what your experiences were, because we're all fans of the sport, right? Before we began to cover it. Now we don't have favorites because we cover the sport and remain unbiased. But all of us, I think, had a favorite driver growing up in our early days of the sport. And just what was your experience with that?
Well, for me, growing up, my favorite driver was Mark Martin. So as far as when my driver retired, you can make the joke, well, hey, you had a couple shots at it and figure out what to do, because he came back a few times. But when he first left Roush and he went to drive the GIM #1 car, it's like, okay, not buying any more 6 gear. I bought an 01 hat. I did not buy a David Reagan hat. Sure, he's a nice guy. Didn't care. His team that I was supposed to be a fan of didn't really treat him very well on the way out. So, and when a lot of guys retire, that could be why. Like, they're ushered out the door maybe before they're ready. So in that respect, why would you be, a fan of that team? So, but no, I was always a Mark Martin fan. And when he retired from the second time from full-time competition, it allowed me to just watch racing and just enjoy it and not have that live and die with the team or your driver every weekend. After 20 years, that gets exhausting, and it takes a toll when they're making a title run and all of a sudden the wheels fall off. So it's just it's different. You get to watch it and appreciate it, and you watch it with a less biased perspective than maybe you did in the past, and maybe an opinion that maybe I had of another driver at one time, hey, maybe that guy's not so bad. So that was my experience, at least.
For me, I grew up a Dale Jarrett fan. I love Dale and everything, and then he retired, and before he went to the 44, I was like, okay, what do I do? And then I was just like, I'll just stick with the 88 number. And so I was a Dale Jr. fan. I was like, okay. And then I kind of just stayed with there. Like I was a Dale Jarrett fan when he went to the 44, but I'm like, I don't know. So I mean, I'm kind of like in the minority where I just stayed with the car number, which I don't think anyone has. But I went from Dale Jarrett to Dale Jr. And I mean, it was fun and everything, but I never was a Dale Junior fan before that. I just was like, okay, I'll pop on someone else's, and then ever since Dale Junior retired, like Massey said, I kind of just transitioned into the media role, and we don't root for drivers, we root for good stories, right? And so whatever the best story is, that's what I'm going to root for. And I mean, for example, like Martinsville this weekend, I want carnage, I want chaos, I want fights, I want Michael Massey to be trampled over a fight on pit road trying to film it on Sunday. That's what I want. I just want good hard racing, and then feelings get hurt, tempers get elevated. That's what I want. But back to the original question. Started with Dale Jarrett, ended with Dale Jr. and I don't know. It was fun just to watch how one driver went and was a little bit different, and then Dale Jr. and he was the most popular driver, and he struggled, and then he finally was good at the very end. It was just very interesting to see the differences.
Yeah, for myself, I was a Rusty Wallace fan, and it was kind of like Vito saying, like, you watch them, you only really watch them at first, and then he has a bad day, it ruins my Sunday. That's kind of how it was. But then so he retires. The thought was at first when he announced it that like I just stick with the 2-car, but then they signed Kurt Busch, and that was at a time where nobody liked Kurt Busch. So like, I can't do that. I can't root for him. So around that time, Bobby Labonte got in the 43 car, and I was really hoping he would win in that car. I was rooting for a couple guys, like Jeff Burton got in the 31 and had a couple good years. My fandom kind of shotgunned at that point, like spread out to a couple different drivers that I was rooting for. And eventually it just kind of faded away from rooting for any driver to rooting for the sport. I'd say that kind of started in like 2011 before I even covered it. Starting with like the Trevor Bayne Daytona 500 win, that now you just root for like storylines. And it's just a much more enjoyable experience because you'll never, I mean, the only time you'd be disappointed is like a Martinsville race where nobody passes anybody. That's the disappointing thing these days. So yeah, it has been a wild ride. It's crazy now that like the years where I actually rooted for Rusty and had a hardcore favorite are just a fraction of the time that I've watched the sport overall now. So it's like that chapter is so far back. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you guys. Like the first race I went to, Bobby Allison won. So like that's how long I've been watching this. I was 5 years. It was like 4 or 5 years old. Michigan, 1982. Bobby won. But my dad was a huge Richard Petty fan. Like he was a Mopar guy growing up throughout the 60s and 70s. So the King was always my dad's driver. So then when I first started watching, like, yeah, I'm naturally a Richard Petty fan. So even from back then, like I've always still kind of followed and kind of pulled for whoever was in the 43 car. And I think Massey kind of touched on that too. Like, unless it's like the Petty Enterprises or the Wood Brothers, like who's ever in the 43 or the 21, like I always kind of naturally want to see them do well, just because that's kind of what I was brought up on, and that was my first like window to the sport decades ago.
Well, we want to hear from you guys. Comment below on our YouTube video on who your favorite driver was / is. Did you stay with the team after the certain driver retired? Did you find a different driver, or did you just quit having a favorite driver? We want to hear from you, so comment below.